here today for our seminar, Communication, Mobilization, and Political Participation, Lessons in Fostering Progressive Change Within Our Communities. This event is part of the UCR School of Public Policy Community Seminar Series, which brings policymakers, practitioners, and researchers to campus to speak about various public policy issues. This is also the next installment of our UCR Alumni Spotlight Series, where we bring notable UCR public policy students back to campus to speak about their work. And before we get started, I just want to first talk about the format of this event. We will have our guest speaker present for about an hour, and then afterwards, we're going to moderate an audience Q&A. And for those of us joining through the Zoom webinar Q&A feature, just type your questions in the Q&A webinar chat box. And for our in-person audience, please walk up to the middle aisle and during the audience Q&A, and just speak into the mic loudly, please. And at this point, I'm honored to introduce you our guest speaker for today's event, Samuel Roberts. Samuel Roberts is an alumni from UC Riverside, where he graduated with a BA in Public Policy in 2020, and he also earned his MVP in 2023 from USC. During his time as a student, he pursued the study of public policy to help ensure equity through California state and local government. Currently, he serves as the Public Communications Officer for San Diego Association of Governments, also known as SANDAG. Additionally, he is the co-founder of the San Bernardino for Rapid Recovery, an organization centered around COVID recovery through the provision of at-home education and PPE for individuals in the Inland Empire. Some of his past jobs have included managing communications for a variety of public institutions, as well as working as a U.S. advocacy, network campus leader, as well as serving the California state parks. We are delighted to host him for this seminar. Now, please join me now in welcoming Samuel Roberts to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for attending my seminar today. It warms my heart to see you all here. I'm really happy to present and share with you what I've done with my career so far, and part the wisdom I have on communications, outreach, advocacy, and mobilization with y'all. So let's get started. Like I said, my seminar is titled Communication, Mobilization, and Political Participation. I chose it because it rhymed, but it's also going to cover what we discussed today. Before I start, I have a ton of people to thank. I wouldn't be here today, wouldn't be able to accomplish what I've done so far without the help of all these and others. First and foremost, thank you to the School of Public Policy. I have a lot of slides, I have a lot of information to cover, and I'm on a time limit. So I can't thank everybody else right now, but yeah, thank you so much. Here's an overview of what I'm going to be discussing today. We're going to start with my time at UCR, what I've done since, and focus on my organization, San Bernardino for Rapid Recovery, and my work currently as an outreach and communications officer with the San Diego Association of Governments. So I want to pose this question to the audience before we begin. Why is communication important in public policy? And you don't need to answer, it's okay, I won't call on anyone. The way I see it though is, I think at every step of the policymaking process, whether you're trying to implement or pass legislation, a policy, or implement a program, there needs to be clear, consistent, equitable communication with the public. You need to get buy-in from the stakeholders and the public in order to ensure the success of the policies and programs you're trying to implement. And it's really necessary to reach out to as many communities as possible and really try and, communicate effectively to the people you're trying to help. I am sort of a policy generalist. I focused on social, cultural, and family policy, as well as health policy at UCR. A lot of my roles and positions since have centered around health policy and environmental policy, which I'll touch on later. I currently work for the San Diego Association of Governments, San Diego's regional transportation planning agency, and they're centered around transportation policy. For a long time, I never really had an interest in transportation policy, and as I started doing more research about SANDAG, I kind of grew into becoming more passionate about that, and I began to realize that a lot of the health and environmental policy aspects really act as a backbone for the transportation policy we're seeking to implement, and it's really interconnected and related, and now, I love transportation policy now as well. So really happy to be at SANDAG, which I'll touch on later. So before we begin, This is where I'm from, Santa Cruz, California, within that red circle right there, in the small town of Aptos, born and raised. Love it out there. If y'all haven't been to Santa Cruz, highly recommend it. It's a beautiful area. Check it out. And now part one, college. All right. So I got my bachelor's in public policy, UCR, 2016-2020. That is my professional headshot that I submitted for the School of Public Policy Ambassador Program way back. I got my master's in public policy at USC, 2021 to 2023. This is a photo I took at the top of the C, which you all should check out if you haven't been. And I created a little nifty little timeline for y'all to illustrate what I did at UCR. Back in, I think this is a laser, oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so I started out freshman and sophomore year doing dining, tours, joined the ambassador program here at the School of Public Policy, joined UCR Honors. I became a writing tutor for athletics in the ARC. My junior year, I joined the UC Advocacy Network as a campus leader. And then my junior and senior year, joined the voter engagement work group, and I was the secretary for Hillel. I'm super proud to be in all these organizations. I think they're all super important. And yeah, I'm going to touch on a few later, but I do want to focus on tours and writing tutoring. I will say, I think that these positions, even though they're not really necessarily related to policy, they were really helpful in teaching me how to communicate with different audiences. For tours, we were giving tours to elementary schoolers all the way up to prospective college students and faculty, VIP, donors and stuff like that. So learning how to tailor information to different groups was a very valuable lesson and tool that I gained from this work. And then being a writing tutor was similar. You know, we were tutoring students with different levels of English language comprehension. And so again, tailoring that information to different audiences is something that's really helped me throughout my career so far. I wanted to focus on a few of these positions though really quickly. First of all, the ambassador program. These were all the ambassadors in my cohort. I have to say, out of everything I did at UCR, this was probably the most significant and important position, role I held. If you are in SPP and you aren't in the ambassador program, highly recommend applying. It really helped me understand how to be a professional and network, meet donors and guests, speakers, and alumni. This was so useful for my professional development. Also, I don't see Mark. Oh, there's Mark in the back. Shout out Mark Manneling. He is great. You all should, if you don't know him, get to know him. Mark is like a great mentor. He's a great person. And yeah, there we are with me, Eric, with former UC President Janet Napolitano, the county executive leadership in Riverside, Chancellor Wilcox as well. Great program. Then I joined the UC Advocacy Network, and this got me involved with advocacy and outreach. There I am messing up a perfectly good promotional picture from the Capitol building with my eyes closed. I don't know why they only took that picture, but anyways, this was a great program. It's a UC-wide program, and I highly recommend checking this out as well. You basically advocate on behalf of the UC system. Some of the campaigns we worked on were double the Pell to help get more Pell Grant funding, and get out to vote efforts as well. We got to go up to Sacramento. They would fly us up to Sacramento. We got to lobby and talk directly with state legislators, one of which is here today, former Assembly Member Jose Medina. I just want to shout out former Assembly Member Medina right now. He is one of my mentors. He is such a great person. He's here today, so I would recommend connecting with him as an individual, unaffiliated with anything, just from my personal view. Elections are tomorrow. Go vote tomorrow. And Jose Medina is running for county supervisor representing this district. So if you're voting within this region, I would say vote for Jose Medina. Personally, that's just me speaking. Okay, check it. Speak with him. He's a great guy. Anyways, yeah. So there's Sabrina Cervantes. We got to interact with a ton of elected officials. It was great for networking and great for making connections with the UC Office of the President. I really got close with them. And like I said, one of the main campaigns was Get Out to Vote 2019-2020. That really inspired me. We did tabling and stuff. We were doing a lot of canvassing, outreach, stuff like that as well. There's one of my quotes, UC system, foundational to California's education. I won't read it all. I don't have enough time. But like I said, UCR Get Out to Vote, it really inspired me to do stuff on my own for Get Out to Vote efforts. There's me leading a seminar at SPP back in 2020. And what I was really passionate about was making sure that students had an accessible way to register to vote, an easy and accessible way. And I had the idea of putting an application on the RWeb student portal that would be auto-populated with student information. It was voter registration application, and you click on it and it would be auto-populated with all your information from your student profile. You could register to vote in like 30 seconds. Super easy, convenient. I later found out this had been an MOU, a memorandum of understanding signed between the Secretary of State in California in 2016, the UC system and the CSU system. So it was in the works, but it hadn't been developed yet. And after speaking with, I got people all throughout UCR involved, the director of admissions, the director of IT, a bunch of different departments. I was able to convene, and we worked with UCLA, who, unbeknownst to me at the time, was starting on an effort like this, and we sought to have that technology shared with us so we could implement it easier and faster for the students. If you notice going on our web today, it's still not up. I led a lot of seminars, I led a lot of town halls. I tried to do as much as I could, as much outreach as I could to get buy-in from students, which was there, but with the onset of COVID-19 in 2020, priorities shifted for the school, and it kind of got left in the dust. So I would say if there's any students looking to do something today, do something cool, you maybe pursue this. Yeah, that would be it. I don't think it's integrated still. So yeah, speak to me after if you're interested in that. But I got to do, through my connections with the UC Advocacy Network, with the UC Office of the President, I got heavily involved with the social media and communications team up there. And I did a lot of different videos, advertisements, helped create and star in ads for the UC system, and create comprehensive videos on how to register to vote with UCR and stuff like that as well. Really enjoyed doing that work. And that was my big effort of 2020. And that really inspired me to pursue more advocacy work and outreach work. This was kind of like, yeah, how I started and what I began. I realized I was really passionate about this, and then I was really, I really enjoyed doing it, and I wanted to do more outreach and advocacy work after graduation. So what happened after graduation? Well, I graduated in 2020. COVID hit in the spring, right around spring break. I went back home to Santa Cruz, finished classes virtually and graduated. And this is at the Nicey Mark State Park in Santa Cruz, very beautiful redwood forest I worked at. So another little timeline for y'all. I did interpretation for the state parks. I did some on my breaks while at UCR, summer break, winter break, and then continued in a full-time capacity after graduating. I was a social media manager for Councilwoman Shebra Kalantari Johnson in Santa Cruz. If anyone is on the Zoom watching from Santa Cruz, go vote for Shebra tomorrow too. She's running for re-election. Great woman. She was running for candidate when I was on her campaign, and then she got elected. I was also a contracted policy analyst for the County of Riverside. This was done in partnership with the School of Public Policy. They held a number of listening sessions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdowns, and we were analyzing qualitatively and quantitatively reactions from the public and their thoughts on the lockdown. And it might be a surprise to y'all, but turns out many people in the County of Riverside were not a fan of the lockdowns. Yeah, so that really got me interested in COVID-19 policy and recovery and stuff like that. Started at USC Price, and I will talk about the rest of this in the presentation. Really quickly though, want to touch on California State Parks. Some of y'all might hear that interpreter and think that I was interpreting other languages. I do not know, I'm not fluent in any other languages. An interpreter really connects with the public, and we're one of those first points of contacts for the state parks, and we help interpret the nature and the history of the parks. And it was a great job. I was leading. I wanted to talk briefly about the pre and post COVID job duties, or pre-COVID and then during COVID job duties, I guess is more accurate, because a lot of interpretation. What I had been taught to do when I started, it was all in person. It was leading guided hikes. It was leading campfires for the people at the camp. Working at the visitor center, just being that first point of contact and helping to disseminate info from the state parks to the public. Now, during COVID, everything kind of was, as we all know, was thrown into disarray, and it totally changed how I had to do, how we all did our jobs. Was very virtual, and everything that I had grown accustomed to, speaking to people face to face, it changed. So we had to readjust and focus on virtual engagement. So I did a variety of things. It was mostly social media videos and stuff like that. But during COVID as well, we were also on the front lines at the parks and dealing with the angry people that were mad that the parks were shut down or that they had to wear masks and stuff like that. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons during this time, because I literally had people trying to fight me during this time. Like when the parks were closed and they wanted to go on the beach, or they wanted to come in the visitor center without wearing a mask, stuff like that. And so it was really hard. It was really hard with me because I totally disagreed with their beliefs. But, you know, as a representative of the state parks, I couldn't say that. I couldn't show that. So I really learned how to, I think, two important things: conflict resolution, de-escalate tensions at the parks. That was really important, and just how to relate to people too, you know, that you don't agree with. So yeah, connecting with them and learning why they feel the way they do, and just trying to de-escalate situations like that. That was really important, something that I learned. This isn't like really important at all, but I just want to show it just because I was really proud of it. So this was my little video series I had during the pandemic. It's called 6 Facts in 60 Seconds with Sam at Seacliff. We don't have time to watch it all, but I'll just show you like the little intro.
I am my big fan. Stay tuned. You girls know and love for the past few episodes of 6 Facts in 60 Seconds with Sam at Seacliff. Today, I'm bringing you 6 facts about another S-named creature. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the sea cucumber. See, a cucumber. So let's get started. Number 1, the green. Number 2, you can pickle them if you put them in the brine. And number 3, we're not going to do the first fact. We're actually going to be talking about sea cucumbers. And if you're confused about what a sea cucumber looks like, you'll see one right here, thanks to the magic of my handy video editing skill. Anyways, enough kidding around. Let's get to the main point of this video: 6 facts about sea cucumbers. Are y'all ready? Yeah! Okay, that's something like a yes. Let's get started. Okay, fact number 1. Sea cucumbers live on the ocean floor, and if you want to try this, helping to recycle nutrients. There are many species that live on the ocean floor.
Okay, this isn't about sea cucumbers. That was just, yeah. They're online though, if y'all are interested. I had like 20 videos. It was great. I loved that. Really proud of it. Anyways, but yeah, we're getting sidetracked. Let's talk about USC Price. I started at USC Price in 2021. I realized my senior year at UCR that I wanted to pursue grad school. I think it's a very valuable thing, a master's program. I don't have too much time to talk about it today, but if you have questions for me after, I'd love to answer them. Very, very grateful. I was very fortunate to be a Dean's Merit Scholar. I received a full ride scholarship to USC for my master's. And while there, I joined the USC Price Ambassador Program. I worked for the school doing social media, and I worked for GPAC, which I totally forgot what that stands for, to be honest with y'all, but that is like the student body, the student elected representatives for the School of Public Policy. And I did social media for them as well. And I was fortunate enough again to be awarded the Jane G. Pisano Award for Excellence in Community Service for my work in San Bernardino for Rapid Recovery, which I will talk about shortly. I wanted to say one thing I learned coming in to USC Price. A lot of what I focused on at UCR was qualitative policy analysis. And I think going into USC, I wasn't shocked necessarily, but I knew to expect more quantitative work. I think the split between qualitative and quantitative analysis at USC Price was about a 50-50 split. And I was doing things I totally thought I wouldn't be prepared for and wouldn't know how to do, like multivariate statistical analysis or microecon, advanced microecon and stuff like that. I think it's very valuable. I would urge y'all, if you're looking and getting an MPP, don't shy away from the quantitative analysis side of things. I think it's very important and useful. And I hear that the curriculum within the public policy program is changing a bit to reflect that. And I think that's great. And I hope you all take advantage of that. Anyways, moving on, I want to briefly mention and shout out my dad, Dave Roberts. There's me and my twin right there. We always called him Dave. And I really miss him. He passed away from COVID-19 in February 17th, 2021. And yeah, he is responsible for getting me involved in politics and having an interest in politics. And I love him a lot. I miss him every day. And my brother and I are at our bar mitzvah, my dad and my mom. And yeah, I'm sad he can't watch this today. I wanted to honor my dad's loss. I really was passionate. Like I said, I'd already been passionate about a COVID-19 response, relief efforts. And I really wanted to do something important to honor his legacy and to make sure that other people weren't losing their lives to COVID. So at the end of 2021, when I moved down to LA to start at USC Price, with one of my best friends right here, Jamie Cole, who I'll talk about in a bit, we co-founded the organization San Bernardino for Rapid Recovery. It was a mutual aid organization focused on COVID-19 relief efforts, providing PPE and such as rapid test kits, masks, gloves, all types of stuff like that, and information about the vaccine. I want to shout out Edwin right there, Cindy, Aria, great volunteers, the UER bros. We had so many others, and I have so many pictures I just don't have time to include or discuss, but thank you to all of our volunteers and all of our partners and everybody for helping us on this effort. Some quick facts about SBRR, San Bernardino for Rapid Recovery, SBRR, that's how I'll refer to it. We received around $250,000 in grant funding. We had 20 total employees, both temp and part-time, over 40 volunteers, and we served over 18,000 residents with COVID education materials and PPE. We also reached like a few 100,000 people through online engagement and phone banking and stuff like that as well. This is an old slide from 2021 from our pitch deck, but so some of the information is a little outdated, but back then, county population, over 2 million, relatively high poverty rate in the region. In terms of COVID, at that point, San Bernardino County had the second highest mortality rate out of counties in California. I think it might be the third or fourth now, so it went down a little bit. But fall 2021 vaccination rates, the vaccine was released like February, March of 2021. Only about 1.1 million were vaccinated, a little over 50%. And you can see right here, this last bullet point, there were huge disparities in vaccinations and which groups were getting vaccinated. And so we sought to, our goal was really to operate in these communities with low vaccination rates to help boost these rates amongst different demographics that had lower vaccination rates than others. This is a screenshot from the New York Times data center thing on COVID. You can see San Bernardino had and this is current, over 8,000 total deaths from COVID. I think it was third to LA and Riverside, although I believe San Bernardino had a higher mortality rate than Riverside. At least it did. I'm not sure about it today, but yeah, it was pretty bad in San Bernardino. For those unfamiliar with the region, this is San Bernardino County. It's a big county, if not the biggest county in California. It's huge. And we operated generally within this vicinity right here, within this circle. Sometimes we're in Riverside, sometimes we're in Redlands, but we mostly stuck to this area. You can see that red dot right there, right by the first original McDonald's museum. That was our office, and that's where we operated. I got to shout out Shamie Cole first before I talk any further. Shamie, like I said, one of my best friends. He graduated from UCR in 2019. He was former ASUCR president. He currently works at Code for America as a project manager. And Shamie was born and raised in San Bernardino. I couldn't have done this work without him. Really, he's a great guy. He has just so many connections within the Inland Empire, the San Bernardino region. And this was definitely a joint effort. couldn't have done it by myself. So I gotta pay respects to the man right here. Shame if you're watching. Yeah, thank you. So how do we even get started? What happened? So I'm going to take it way back. So it's fall 2021, October, mid-October, and we had been working on this idea. Our original idea was providing vaccinations at people's houses, and going with a nurse and traveling with a nurse to people's houses, having them request vaccines, and we vaccinate them at their doorsteps. Super easy, right? We're aware of CORE. CORE stands for Community Organized Relief Effort. It's an international relief organization. It's founded by the actor Sean Penn. They really operate all over. And we were really drawn to them because they were responsible for helping put up the Dodger Stadium COVID-19 testing and vaccination site. It was one of the biggest vaccination and testing sites in the state of California. You can see huge numbers of tests and vaccines administered. And so because we're so focused on vaccinations, we really wanted to connect with them and see what they were doing that was right. You know, what were they doing that was so effective? How were they able to accomplish this? So we sat down, we set up a meeting in November with them. It was a 1-hour meeting. And at the end of that 1-hour meeting, we said, look, you know, we were asking our questions and we said, look, this is what we're passionate about. This is what we want to do. Do you have any advice? And they said, look, we're applying for a grant, $240,000 grant with the California Department of Public Health. We're looking for someone to operate, an organization to operate in the Inland Empire. And we would like to subgrant this to you if you're willing. And of course we said yes, we'd be fools not to. So we said, heck yeah, let's do it. And we applied for the grant. Before I get any further, I just got to shout out to our other partners, because this just wasn't just us and CORE, it was all these organizations and more. And thank you to the Inland Empire Health Plan for also being one of our grantees as well. But definitely, again, joint effort. It wasn't just us out there. There's so many other groups and important organizations that I just wanted to recognize. But this was kind of our timeline. So VA 58 stands for vaccinate all 58 counties in California, vaccinate all 58. And this was our timeline. So fall 2021, we worked on our grant application, worked on budgeting, worked on budgeting. And I will say my master's of public policy, my MPP curriculum really came into play right here, because we were working on budgeting for policies and programs and stuff like that at the time. And I was able to, reuse templates that I was using in my MPP program to apply for this grant. That came in super useful, and it helped me make sure I wasn't leaving anything out in the budgeting process. Worked on our outreach plan, winter to spring, developed outreach materials, purchased materials, hired staff. Spring to winter, we did canvassing, changed our outreach and talking points based on community feedback. That was a continuous effort. We worked to expand outreach efforts. So you might notice right here, there's nothing that discusses vaccinations. Were we giving out vaccinations? We were not. What happened was it took so long. There were so many. It was a very arduous process getting vaccination administration insurance and coverage from the state of California, to get that coverage from the state. We went through so many hurdles to get that, and we were facing a grant deadline that we had to decide ultimately to change streams and focus on a different approach. It wasn't that we weren't passionate about it. We were, and this was hard at first, because at least for me, I was so stuck on, this is what I want to do. This is what's going to save the most lives. And I couldn't really see it from any other perspective. And then, when we were at that point where we were facing a looming deadline, and we needed to expend our resources and continue our work, at the end of the day, we had to change our efforts and reevaluate what we were doing. And this is similar in a sense to what I had experienced with Get Out to Vote efforts and that RWeb tool I spoke about earlier at UC Riverside. And I don't view it as necessarily as failure, because I don't view it as failure at all, because, at the end of the day, we still were helping save lives. We still were out there in the community making a difference. But at the time I was a little disappointed, but reflecting now, the advice I gained from that, I would say, make sure you have a plan B and C available in case something goes awry. And redefine, make sure, it's important to have backup plans. That's what I would impart on y'all. I'm still very proud of the work we did. I think we reached a ton of people, and people were getting vaccinated at the end of the day through our work. So passionate about that. This is the work that we were doing. We kind of took a three-pronged approach to outreach, starting with primarily in-person engagement. We had weekly and daily canvassing. I primarily was doing canvassing on the weekends because I was living in LA for grad school. We had a temp team that would manage, that would do canvassing every single day of the week. We would attend community events as well. And we had boxes that we would give out filled with information about the vaccine, the PPE that I mentioned as well. Bless you. And then we also did virtual engagement. Was another prong of our outreach approach. This involved phone banking, targeted social media advertisements, and targeted radio advertisements to hit the demographics we were seeking to boost vaccination rates with. And then mutual aid we expanded into at a later date at the end of second half of 2022. This involved Trim the Hesitancy, a program where we funded haircuts at Black-owned barbershops and spoke with individuals to boost vaccination rates and clear up any misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccine. We also worked with local food banks to provide mutual aid and non-perishable food items to those in need. What did we see out in the field? A lot of hesitation, a lot of anger. There was some resentment. There was heavy emotions a lot of people were very passionate about either getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated. It didn't seem like there was too much in between. A lot of angry people, and in some cases, it was very hard connecting with residents in San Bernardino. I think something that I did in order to communicate effectively with these different communities and areas we're reaching out to was, again, connecting with them on a personal level. A lot of these people I found hadn't really met anyone who had suffered from a personal loss of COVID-19. Being able to relate and let them know about my dad and why I was passionate about doing this helped people. People were responding positively to that. And that was really important. I think once people saw it from that light and that perspective, they were more willing to look into getting the vaccine, which was the first step, and actually getting vaccinated as well. That's not to say it worked every time. There definitely were people, for whether it be distrust of the government, strong religious or political reasons, a lot of people, were very passionate about the vaccine, both positively and negatively. So it was hard connecting with people. I'm not going to lie, there were in some areas, it was not the best areas. I was fortunate enough, some of our teams, for the most part, we were all safe. There was one time we got, some of the team members got a gun pulled on them, which was pretty crazy. That didn't happen to me. Everybody was safe. Everybody still alive today, which is good. And, but yeah, it was a very tense and polarized time. I think there was a lot of anger and dissatisfaction. And so I learned a lot of things being out in the field and dealing firsthand with that anger. Like I was saying, how to communicate effectively. Another really of what I learned in the field, how to communicate effectively, how to bring together volunteers. Another really important thing, bringing together volunteers. I was so focused on the outreach aspect. How are we communicating with the public? What information and materials are we providing to the public? That, something that wasn't at the forefront of my mind during that time was how to connect with our volunteers, make sure they want to come back and join us again for future canvassing efforts. And I credit Shamey for really taking the lead on this and making sure we provided a warm and welcoming environment for all of our volunteers. Again, thank you to all of our volunteers if you're watching online thank you. And so this was really, really important. Also, how to build strategic partnerships, like I've touched on. This was a group effort. Totally indebted to all of our partners for helping us become, really ingrained in the community and become noticeable and notable in the community and build up our status as a community organization and for San Bernardino, and help us build up recognition. Learned how to effectively manage employees as a campus leader for UCAN. For the UC Advocacy Network, I had done some management, but this really was like a whole different league, whole nother level. I learned a lot about, managing employees, and it was hard. You can see right here on challenges, managing employees. I learned at the end of it how to effectively manage it and during it, but there were times, during our work where we had employees who that were temp workers or maybe some part-time employees. And granted, it was a very, very small percentage, very small, 1 or 2 employees that just seemed like they were in it more so for financial compensation, rather than to help the community. And I wasn't expecting that going in, and I learned, a lot how to work with employees to get them to pursue your intended project goals. And then, how to make inroads with the community at large. Like I've touched on through all of this, it really revolves. Combines all of this. You got to have those strategic partnerships, the volunteers, and communicate effectively with the public. Again, like I'd mentioned, changing focus of the organization was very challenging for me at first. That was something I was, that was very hard for me. But like I said, I always have a plan B and C. And okay. So now we're going to talk about SANDAG, the San Diego Association of Governments. Super excited to talk about this. My current role is an outreach and communications officer. SANDAG is located in downtown San Diego. That's our main office building. And we're involved in a variety of projects. So what I have right here, you notice that the formatting totally changed. This is an introductory presentation that SANDAG generally uses to introduce the public to our rules and processes. I will note, I want to preface this by saying this is not the 2024 Intro to SANDAG 101. This is a few years old, so there is some outdated information. I will do my best to point out when that's outdated. But yeah, just so y'all know. Okay, so what is SANDAG? What is the San Diego Association of Governments? Well, we're really all of these things. You may have heard me earlier mention Regional Transportation Planning Agency, but we're a Council of Governments Consolidated Agency. We're all of these things right here. Some of y'all, I think you might be more familiar with SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. You can see right here. And we're all metropolitan planning organizations. You can see just how there's metropolitan planning organizations throughout the country. These are the ones in California right here. What I really think is special about SANDAG, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to work here, is because, compare SANDAG real quick with SCAG for a second. You see SCAG encompasses 4 or 5 different counties. San Diego is confined to just San Diego County. And I think, in terms of passing policies or programs or working on programs, it's, in my eyes, it's a bit easier to do so within SANDAG as maybe one of these other MPOs, because you don't have all those different, that representation from all those different governments, because, for example, you'll have Riverside, San Bernardino, LA, like so much in SCAG, but it's just San Diego centric for SANDAG. And that's something, I really appreciate the scope and the size of SANDAG. A little bit about the San Diego region. At SANDAG, we're not just working locally, we're working on a state level, a national level, and internationally as well. Of course, we all know that San Diego borders Mexico, so we're working with the Mexican government, we're working with surrounding local governments, the state government, and on a national level as well. That's where we're located. Okay, this is a little out of date. But this is the board of directors. First of all, I need to shout out Hassan Akrada. Hassan Akrada is a great individual. He just resigned in last December from SANDAG. He now teaches at USC and UCLA. Funny story for y'all. I mentioned earlier how much SPP ambassador program, how important it was to me at UCR. Excuse me. Hassan Akrada, I met him through the SPP Ambassador Program. I interviewed him for a podcast on behalf of the SPP Ambassador Program in 2018, 2019. And since then, I was able to maintain a relationship and connect with him years later after that. And if not for that podcast, I most likely would have not been too aware of SANDAG, and I wouldn't have had that connection in the first place. Knowing Hassan, he was able to bring me down to San Diego before I started at SANDAG. And I got to meet some of the directors and talk to them and really get my foot in the door to working at SANDAG. And so super, super great guy, really appreciate him. And I think that just illustrates the power of networking and making sure you're connecting with as many people as you can, building relationships. So that's, if I have to leave y'all with any advice, network. Anyways, these are some of the board of directors. These are like the chair, Nora Vargas, the vice chairs. And the board of directors really guide the work that Sandag does as a whole. It's an organization. They're responsible. They set the path for us, and they say, here's what we want you to work on, and here's what we want you to do. And they're informed by our 6 committees right here that you can see. And they're what they say goes. They guide our work. Now, I want to focus on a few different things that Sandag does. This isn't comprehensive at all. Sandag does so much. I could spend hours just talking about all the different things Sandag does. But I want to focus on a few different things. First of all, one of the most important things we do is the regional plan. This basically a 30-year prospective plan for the San Diego region. It's updated every 4 years. The next update will be released 2025. We plan for the future of transportation in San Diego, policy in San Diego, and provide a financial plan as well. So really helping to guide the region. Additionally, a big thing, probably the most, well, I don't want to say most important, but one of the biggest things we do is focus just on transportation, whether that be enhancing walkability in San Diego, working on establishing more bikeways, focusing on enhancing public transportation on buses, trains, or just transportation for cars as well. We're involved with a multitude of public transportation efforts, and this is a very integral part of our work. So I mentioned earlier some things are outdated. This slide is a little outdated. In terms of priority projects, the Central Mobility Hub and Smart Corridors, I believe, are no longer priority projects for 2024. Doesn't mean they can't be priority projects in the future. Just for this year, we're focusing on some other things. Most importantly, well, not most importantly, but importantly, the Low Sand Corridor and the Del Mar Bluffs. Low Sand Corridor, this is one of the main things I work on doing outreach for. Low Sand Corridor stretches from San Diego, the Port of San Diego, up to San Luis Obispo. It's the railroad that connects all these different counties, carrying freight and passengers for everyone. Also the Otay Mesa East, port of entry, working on this new border entry between San Diego and Mexico, and then the Purple Line and Blue Line commuter rail as well. These are priority projects for Sandag. And I'll talk more about Low Sand in a little bit. We also have a whole data and modeling team. Here at Sandag, we have our open data portal, which helps inform all our work and is accessible to the public. And it has a ton of different data sets for individuals to access, such as highway traffic data, crime mapping data, interactive bike map, all types of stuff like this. If you're interested in looking at any of this, check it out, Sandag Open Data Portal. And then we also have ARJIS, ARJIS. That's our criminal justice arm of Sandag. We do research on criminal justice at Sandag as well, which I think is super interesting. We also have regional initiatives, so our housing acceleration program. We have our digital equity program, Youth Opportunity Pass, so providing free public transportation passes to residents under the age of 18, and then Vision Zero, which seeks to reduce the number of bike fatalities down to 0. And then Transnet and local funding. Transnet is a half-cent tax measure that was passed, I believe, in late 1980s. And I believe I just read between when it was passed and I think mid-2010s, it was responsible for raising $1.3 billion in revenue. And that helps us fund projects in local jurisdictions, transportation improvement projects, stuff like that. We also have a big environmental mitigation program, active transportation and smart growth, housing acceleration grant programs, specialized transportation grant program as well. I worked on both of these, doing outreach for both. Specialized transportation is for this disabled and elderly, providing ride share services for them, and we help fund those services through grants. And then housing acceleration grant program, helping to build affordable housing in the region. This is where I come into play with my outreach work. We do a ton of stakeholder and community engagement. For most of our programs, there's the legal requirement that we have to engage with the public, but at Sandag, we like to go above and beyond and make sure that we're engaging in proactive community engagement methods, whether that be canvassing, going door to door and telling people about a project that's being developed in their neighborhood or community, or doing pop-ups at train stations or along bike trails or hiking trails, stuff like that, or going to town halls and presenting to city councils on what we're doing. It's extremely important that we do so in an equitable manner and try and reach as many people as we can throughout the San Diego region. So I'm going to end this introductory presentation with our mission statement. SANDAG is the regional forum that connects people, places, and innovative ideas by implementing solutions with our unique and diverse communities. I made these next few slides, so you can see there's a big difference in quality right here. But this is our executive leadership, and these are our departments. A few different departments in SANDAG. We have public affairs, planning, engineering, accounting and finance, data science, organizational effectiveness, and general counsel. I fall under the public affairs department, and we have 4 different teams within this department. I want to highlight each one really quickly. Visual communications, so important. As you can see with the other slides that they did, they're responsible for making everything look appealing and easy to understand to the public. And their role cannot be understated. They're so important in the work that we do and making the information that we have for the public accessible for everyone. We also have our government relations team. They're responsible for communicating with the board, local, state, federal, and international governments and stakeholders. We have our marketing and communications team as well. They're responsible for news releases, setting up news interviews, our social media posts, everything like that. And then we have outreach, which I'm in, and a lot of times I like to think of outreach as a first point of contact in many cases between the public and SANDAG. We kind of, in some senses, act as an intermediary between the engineering and planning departments and the public. They have these programs, they have these projects that they're working on, and we try to make sure the information is accessible and easy to understand for the public. And yeah, that's we work on holding a variety of events to make sure that everybody in the communities we're working in, which is really the whole San Diego region, we want the whole San Diego region to be aware of the projects and programs we're pursuing and how they can get involved and how their voices can be heard in these processes. So kind of just touched on that. We really work on all the projects and programs at SANDAG. A majority of them is outreach is involved. What tenets guide us in our work? I would say number one, most importantly, is equity, making sure there's equitable access to the information and there's equitable access. We're responding and listening to everybody in the community, everybody's voice. No matter what they have to say, we are listening to them and we are taking into account what they have to tell us and what their thoughts are on our programs and projects. How do we work with other teams to accomplish our goal? This is not a siloed effort. This is not just outreach doing its own thing. Like I said, we work with the departments of engineering and planning to convey information to the public. We're working with everybody in public affairs to make sure that they're all aware that it's a joint effort. So whether we're doing outreach, for example, for a city council in San Diego, we're working with the government relations team to set that up. We're doing visual communications to help have their input on the PowerPoint, the presentation of whatever we're doing. And we're working with PIO, with marketing and communications, to make sure that it's broadcast to the areas we are going to be speaking to. I think what I have next for y'all is a short presentation. This is something that we used at the City of Del Mar. This is one of the projects that I work on. The low sound rail realignment in the City of Del Mar. City of Del Mar is located along the ocean, and right now the railroad tracks are on the bluff's edge, the bluffs along the ocean. The bluffs have been steadily eroding for a while now. We've worked on implementing a variety of short-term stabilizations efforts over the past decade or decades or so, and there's throughout the region it's understood that those are short-term solutions. There needs to be a long-term solution to this work. And so we've recognized that the railroad tracks need to come off the bluffs and go somewhere else. And so we're currently in the process of figuring out where that somewhere else is. Now, this is a very contentious issue within the City of Del Mar right now. Of course, people are passionate about it. We're talking about moving the railroad tracks somewhere else, maybe in the community of Del Mar, maybe elsewhere in the broader San Diego community. So people want to have input into this program. I thought the best way to illustrate what we do is to just show you these slides as an example. This was done February 5th. So what is today, March 4th? So less than a month ago, yeah. So this is pretty recent. And this is how we communicated to the public with such a high priority issue. So first we showed them when we last met. We had been presenting at the town halls for a while, the city council meetings, and we refreshed the community members and the city council members. Maybe some community members were just coming to this one, and this was their first presentation. So we wanted to tell everybody, what it is that we've done so far. Expanding on that, talking about in the fall of 2023, how we had engaged in 5 public workshops and community field offices, and how we collected information during that time, whether it be through written comments, email, public comments, or drawn alignment suggestions, which I'll touch on in a bit. The themes that we heard, we want to make sure we are listening to the public, and we want to make it clear that, what you have to say is being heard, and we do value the information and your opinions. And so what we heard, consider other alignments. They wanted more information about the project development process, and they wanted additional technical information. These are the project goals set forth by our engineering and planning groups or department. Relocate the bluffs, number 1. Minimize community impacts. Improve travel times, whether that be through the straightening of curves, which you can see along here, or double tracking, which is adding another track so trains can pass each other. And then improving coastal access and safety, and preserving the wetlands that surround Del Mar. So those are our project goals. Our engineering and planning teams had previously identified these alignment solutions as alternatives to the tracks along the bluffs, which you can see right here. These circles are portals, which are the entrances and exits of the tunnels. So a lot of these are, not all of them, but a lot of them involve tunneling under these regions. So we had presented this to the public, and of course people had a lot of input and a lot of other ideas. So we wanted to take their ideas into account. We had an activity at some of our public workshops where they could draw out alignments that they thought we should pursue and look into and study further. And so there's a variety of these. Currently, our engineering team is looking with our consultants and our planning team to see which ones might be feasible to pursue and study further, and which ones potentially can be eliminated if they aren't feasible. There is a lot, as I said, as I started this presentation, there's a lot of contention in this Del Mar community. There is a lot of misinformation about what's going on with this project. We've engaged in proactive outreach, and some people have been under the assumption that we are starting construction already and already way ahead, like all the way out here, when in fact we're out here. So we wanted to do a comprehensive timeline to show, look, this is where you get to speak to us. This is like, we welcome, outreaching, we welcome your ideas all the time, but this is where your input is really important in the public process of the environmental process. As you can see, this is a project that's going to take another at least 11 years. This is a long project. This is not something that's happening within a year or two. This environmental analysis and studies won't even stop until at least 2026. Then we laid out the CEQA process overview. There were a lot of questions about this, so we wanted to make the process a little easier to understand and point out, when is your public comment and input necessary for this project? And we are having our public scoping meeting, I believe, mid-April of next month. Then upcoming technical studies. And this is really important as well, because a lot of people were under the assumption that we had already engaged in some of these studies, such as a cost-benefit analysis, some of these technical studies, when in fact, we are just beginning the environmental process. So we wanted to make it clear, look, this is a comprehensive analysis and study. All of these studies are helping inform our final recommendation for where we believe the railroad track should go. As I mentioned, there has been misinformation about some statistics and stuff like that. The Lausanne Rail Corridor is the second busiest intercity rail corridor in the United States. You can see that right there. There was some contention over this statistic because, as you can see, there is a big difference between number 1 and number 2 on the East Coast and West Coast, but that doesn't negate the fact that it is, in fact, the second busiest intercity rail corridor. And also we wanted to point out, a majority of people within the San Diego region recognize that the railroad is important for the economy of San Diego. But there is a small minority of individuals who don't necessarily believe that the railroad should exist still. It might be easier to tear out the railroad and just not have it at all. And so we wanted to point out, it is important. It is necessary for the San Diego region and the state of California. Again, we wanted to point out, look, there's so many, of course, as I mentioned, this runs all the way to SLO, San Luis Obispo. So there's a lot of different agencies and governments that control and manage the different parts and segments of the railroad. So we want to point out this is something that's a joint effort. It's not just sandbagging this. This is a joint effort, and it involves a bunch of different agencies and government organizations. Then we answered common questions with the FAQ right here, and we took answered more questions through public comment. And then we provided people the way to connect to us. Okay, so that's a sample presentation right there. I want to wrap up because I know I'm running a little bit over for Q&A, so I want to make sure we get around to that. But here are my last thoughts. I would say, first and foremost, put yourself out there. A lot of the stuff that I did at UCR and that I've done since, I haven't been really comfortable doing at first. Like it's not hard. It's not easy to put yourself out there sometimes, but I like to force myself and challenge myself. And I think it's really important that y'all do too. If you're out of your comfort zone and you're doing something you're passionate about, but you're out of your comfort zone, I would say you're doing the right thing. So yeah, put yourself out there. Say yes to as many opportunities as you can within reason. Within reason. Don't overwork yourself, but try and beef up your resumes, especially now while you're at UCR if you're in college. Apply yourself, focus on your education. Again, get involved. This is really important. I tried to get as involved as I could at UCR, and I think it helped me out a lot. Try to empathize with others. Even if you don't agree with them, I think we live in a very polarized time right now. I think there's a lot of anger and people are just very upset about a lot of things, and it's easy to be angry back. And just if you strongly believe in something, I used to not confrontational, but I used to speak my mind a lot, if I didn't agree with something. And I think it's important to understand where people are coming from, try and reason with them and work with them to see where you're coming from. I think it's a lot easier to change people's minds when you do that rather than, arguing with them. And then I think realize that you and the work you're doing is important, even if it always doesn't feel like it. There's a huge government burnout issue. There's a lot of burnout in government work. And I think, with the levels of bureaucracy and red tape, it can be hard to think that you're making a difference sometimes. But I think reminding yourself you're doing this for the greater public good, and it's important, the work you're doing is important, is necessary. It's important that we remind ourselves of that. What's worked for me, not having an exact plan for everything, be open to change. I never thought I'd be in San Diego. I never thought I'd be at USC. I didn't really have a set plan, but I think that's, as long as you have a general idea of what you want to do, I think that's wise. But don't plan everything out to a T. And yeah, be open to change. Just like I mentioned earlier, we had to change our goal for SBRR. I had to change my goal for Get Out to Vote initiatives here at UCR. I think that's really important. Don't hold grudges. Those don't help you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, network. Yay, network. It's so important. Yeah, just connect with everyone. Connect with Jose Medina after this. Connect with everybody. Yeah, it's so important. It'll help you out so much. So to conclude, communication, advocacy, and outreach are necessary tools in the policymaking process. Thoughtful and equitable engagement is necessary to enact change and gain support for policies and projects, and it's important to consider the views of others, as I've said. I feel like a broken record now. At this point in time, I want to thank you all for listening. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much for attending today. Really appreciate it. I want to open up the floor for Q&A. I think Liam's going to help me out with that, but really quickly, I messed up today. I forgot to bring my business cards that I could give out to y'all. But I'm really interested, if you're passionate, if you have more questions that don't get answered during the Q&A, this is my email. If you want to take a picture, feel free to email me and reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to connect with anyone who's interested further. So thank you all so much again. I'll pass this off to Liam. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Samuel. That was an amazing seminar. And now, like Sam said, we're going to move on to the Q&A session with our audience members. And if anyone in the in-person audience has any questions, please come up to the center and just speak loudly and clearly into the mic. And those in the Zoom webinar audience, just please input your questions through the Zoom Q&A feature, and then Isa Hassan, our fellow ambassador, will answer it for you. So at this point, we're going to have time for questions.
Yay.
Hi. So I would have two questions. So the first is to kind of like what
starting with question one. Why did I decide to pursue grad school, and why did I end up at USC and choose schools to apply to? I guess I feel like I'm a perpetual student. I still want to do law school. We'll see if that happens. But I love I love learning. I like being in school, and so it was just a natural continuation for me. Grad school, and I'm very passionate about public policy. So that's why I thought MPP would be right for me. I knew I loved living in California, so I knew I wanted to stay here. All my family's out here. I love the nature out here and everything. So I only applied to schools in California, and then I only chose. USC is a good school. I chose USC though because of the aid. If I didn't get that scholarship, I wouldn't have been. I couldn't afford USC, so that's why I chose that. But yeah, UCR has a great MPP program as well that I want to shout out. I think is really great that they have a BA MPP program now. That's pretty cool. You also check that out. But yeah, that was my reasoning behind going to grad school. In terms of public input, I believe you asked if there was any so-so public input that we received. I wouldn't say. I think all the public input that we've gotten has been important. And granted, I started at Sandag in October, so I haven't been around for a terribly long time. It's been I'm nearing 6 months now. Next month, but in terms of the public interactions and the engagement and what we've heard from the public so far, I think resoundingly it's always positive just getting input from the public on different projects. And I don't think necessarily I would classify any input on our projects as mediocre. I think if there's a case where we don't get public input, I haven't, like I said, I'm relatively new, so I haven't experienced any cases where we haven't gotten as much public input as we'd like to on projects. But I would assume if that were the case, we'd just expand our outreach efforts and try different techniques, So.
Sam, thank you for your presentation. It's been exciting for me to see you move through all these different things that you've done in your career, as I'm sure it is for your professors here at UCR. My question, in all these different things that you've done, what has been the most surprising thing about the political process to you that you've learned?
Thank you. The most surprising thing that I've seen in the political process so far, I think what comes to mind probably for me, I guess I'm very, and I kind of hinted at it earlier with talking about government burnout, but I think, I'm very optimistic when it comes to passing policy and stuff. And there's been times where just, you hear about the red tape and the bureaucracy slowing things down and slowing projects down and policies. And I think, it's different learning about it and actually experiencing it. Granted, I will say, it's not just there just to be there. It's an important part of the policy process. And when you're implementing policies and programs, I think it's, it's an important part of the process, but it really was a little eye-opening now working in government, having different government adjacent positions and working within the government. I think experiencing it firsthand, it is surprising to me, dealing with that and working through that. But with that being said, it's there for a reason. It's there to ensure that there's equity in the policies we're pursuing, the programs we're pursuing, and the work that we're doing to make sure that nobody is left out of what we're trying to implement, and that we do so in the best way possible. So I would say, I think that was surprising to me, graduating college and getting involved in government work. But that's not to say I don't recognize that as unnecessary or unimportant.
We're doing the Sam. Quick question, I guess more student centered. I know when I was a student here, my schedule was crazy. So was yours. So any suggestions, advice, feedback, especially when you're kind of working these crazy hours, balancing school with work? And also I know you're talking a lot about the importance about networking, especially, you've had the great privilege of having someone like Assemblymember Medina, Hassan, and others to mentor you. But how important is it for you to network and make good friends with your peers. And even us, we've known each other for such a long time, and we continue to engage and connect. And any advice for our students here in terms of, forbidding these, for making these strong friendships with your peers, and how maybe that helps you in your future?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I was really busy at UCR, really busy. It's like 8 to 8 with just like a half an hour break. And it was stressful. It was a lot. What really got me through this, my savior, Google Calendar, keep your calendars updated. That is so beneficial, at least for me. It really helped organize, remember what I needed to do, make sure you have a running list of the tasks and deliverables you need to work on. That was super important for me. And then just, prioritize, making sure you're prioritizing, working on the most important things. Of course, school is the most important. So focus on school, and then everything else. That was how I approached it. School was the most important. Everything else was secondary. So I made sure to get done with my schoolwork, responsibilities, and then pursue my extracurriculars and volunteer work and job work after that. Like Eric mentioned, we've been friends for probably like 6 years now. I met Eric through the SBP Ambassador Program. I'm still friends with a lot of the ambassadors, all of the ambassadors today. They're great people. It's really important to network with your peers. For example, I mentioned earlier knowing Hassan and getting a job at Sandag, him helping me and get me introduced to different people at Sandag. What I didn't mention was his daughter, Natalie Akrada. Natalie Akrada went to UCR with me and USC with me, and she helped facilitate, more meetings between me and Hassan for me to really get to know him. And she was one of my peers. She was, so you never know. I think it's really exciting because I've graduated. It's been 4 years since I graduated UCR, and so many of the peers and my friends that I worked with are doing so many great things, whether they're working for Deloitte, like consultants like Deloitte, or working for elected officials in LA and Riverside and San Diego and San Bernardino. It's just so important to network and make those connections and really make sure you're continuing to connect with people after graduation, and you're just maintaining those connections and friendships with your peers, because we're the next generation of leaders. And so we're all capable of great things. I know I'm confident everybody here, if you're here listening, we're gonna do great. So I think it's really important that we connect and build up these relationships, not just with people who have been in government for years, or but the people just entering now, because you never know where those connections will take you. Yeah, you can go. You're good.
Okay, sorry. So you did mention something about your budgeting template that you did for your grant application. I was wondering if you could kind of highlight some key details or like topics that you felt made it more successful for you to get your grant approved. Kind of just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, the first grant we received through the California Department of Public Health and CORE was $240,000, which was like more money than I've ever dealt with in like my entire life, and probably will deal with for like the next 5 years. But at least, so it was a lot of money. And so what we needed to do was figure out, how are we allocating our budget properly? What are we gonna expend our financial resources on, and how are we gonna spend our money properly, and what does that entail? And so there were so many things, like before starting my MPP program, when it comes to policy or passing program implementation and policy implementation, that I just never would have really considered, such as like just the really simple things like tables or materials, like just stuff like that, or like how we were like the packets of information that we were gonna need to produce, stuff like that. A lot of our, not a lot, but some of our budgeting work in the MPP programs focus specifically on like what materials are needed for like outreach and engagement to get buy-in from stakeholders. And so being able to use that as like a baseline and go off of those templates were really useful for me. And so that was the budgeting was useful there. And then of course we had input from CORE, and what they, if there was anything we left out, we got input from them as well. So for example, I know like we didn't even consider iPads or anything like that to get information from people or have them fill out forms when we were going to their houses and stuff. So that was something, we budgeted for example, that we just didn't think of beforehand. So it was input from, I would say that the Master's of Public Policy program, from our grantees, from core, and just, through learned experience. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, cool.
We're going to answer a question from the Zoom Q&A feature. So
from Augustine Perez from the Zoom feature. So once you got your foot in the door in a company like Sandag, what has been one valuable thing that you have done to set yourself up for future advancement in your career?
It's a great question. Thank you, Augustine. Shout out Augustine. He's a great guy. My roommate. It's a cool dude. Thank you, Augustine. That's a good question. What have I done to get my foot in the door? I've touched on this so much already, but networking, I try to get lunch. Sandag's a huge organization, first of all. So there's about like at least 400 individuals working in Sandag. I showed you all the departments. There's a bunch of teams within those departments. It's huge. And what I've been trying to do to set myself up for success is network with as many people as possible. I get lunch each week I try to do 2 to 3 lunches with different individuals each week, get to know their backgrounds. And yeah, get to know what brought them to Sandag, what they're interested in, their future career, Sandag and potentially beyond Sandag. And yeah, I try to get lunch with as many people as possible and network. I find it being very beneficial, and it's helped me. I'm new to the San Diego region. I just moved down in October. I don't really have too many connections out there, but getting to network with employees at Sandag is opening me up to connections throughout the San Diego region as well. I'm getting to establish myself more as a professional down there. Also, I know Augustine just asked for one example, but I'm going to provide 2 because it's such a good question. One thing I'm also working on is implementing a task management system, a system to track deliverables between our teams in the public affairs department. Y'all probably have heard of like Asana or Basecamp or programs like that to track deliverables. That's something that isn't currently integrated into our department, but I've been working. I brought up the idea at one of our department meetings, and I am now leading a small strike team to get that implemented, hopefully by April. So I think that's really helped me too, bringing an outside innovative idea to the department, and it's I think that's important as well. Trying to think outside the box and improve upon. If there's something if you're working and at your position, you see something that you think would be useful, don't be afraid to speak up and try and recommend and pursue whatever that may be.
I believe we have another question from the Zoom Q&A.
Oh, great.
So we have another question from David Smith. During your time as a social media coordinator, what insight did it provide you in our landscape, and how can it improve to meet public policy / public health needs?
Yeah, great question, David. Shout out to David Smith. Thanks for hopping on. As a social media coordinator, I think before I touch on what I saw, I think most importantly, working in social media was actually more challenging than I thought it would be. I thought it's just like, oh, you tweet and you post on social media, but it's really important how you craft the language of social media posts. And I think that's definitely a very important skill in this day and age, is understanding how to craft effective messaging over social media. And it's hard. I personally find it hard because you got to be concise, you got to get to the point, and you got to be engaging. So how do you combine all those things? What I saw on social media, engagement wise, touching on the work I did, for example, for the state parks, it always helped to be as engaging as possible, a little funny. The videos that I did that I showed y'all were kind of dumb, not gonna lie. They weren't like they were kind of cringy. I mean, they weren't like professionally produced or anything like that, but I think it was a little endearing. The public seemed to connect with that. And so I think, tone is really important, and the language you use to engage with the public. I saw that's very important to the success of social media engagement. I hope that answers your question, David.
At this point, we're going to be taking one more question from the audience and then one more from the Zoom. No no one in the audience has a question, then we can just take the last one from Zoom.
From Susan Cars, who said, "Wonderful presentation, Sam. Thank you." And then
It's my second grade teacher. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
And then our last question is from Renee Roberts. Any suggestions for your peers on how to apply for scholarships for master's programs? What about the UCR master's program in public policy?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the PA MPP program is great. Thanks, Mom. That's a good program. So I've heard. I'm not in the program, so I wasn't in it myself, but I've heard nothing but great things. So definitely recommend y'all checking that out. And applying for scholarships, I had just applied for the merit scholarship. In terms of USC gives out a lot of aid, way more than I expected. I never thought I'd get into USC. USC gives out a ton of aid. There were probably like 20 students, 18 to 20 in my cohort out of like 80 that received like full rides, or at least 75% aid. So there's a lot of aid out there. That's what I will say. And just in general, beyond USC, there's a lot of aid. Don't be shy in applying for scholarships. Apply to as many as you can. I was applying for other ones outside of that. The merit scholarships for schools, I was applying to a bunch of different ones, and some I did get and some I didn't get, but at the end of the day, it provided valuable experience, just better understanding. It was just valuable experience writing those statements, those personal statements and everything like that. That'll really help you because I think it helped me craft like just a better personal statement for my grad school applications. So yeah.
So unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions today, but I would like to thank you again so much, Sam, for joining us today for the UCR School of Public Policy Community Seminar and Alumni Spotlight. We're all very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you as well to our audience members.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate y'all coming out.
Thank you as well to our audience members for being here with us today. We hope to see you all at our next School of Public Policy event. For example, on March 7th, we will host 2 back-to-back seminars by our current public policy students. Rafael Barrientos Posada will talk about the drug war and Mexican cartels, and Joseph Anastasio will talk about the state of Afghani refugees. Then on March 16th, we invite you to the UCR Highlander Day of Service, where we will assemble care packages for the homeless. And you can learn more events like these at the UCR School of Public Policy webpage, spp.ucr.edu. And while you're there, you can also learn about our new Masters of Public Policy program, as mentioned in the presentation, and our newly launched combined BA MPP program. Additionally, you can watch our official podcast series, Policy Chats. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and feel free to get some refreshments and snacks. Have a good night.